Welcome to Frankly Speaking, the podcast on responsible business from Frank Bold, the European public interest law firm. I'm Richard Howitt, and after leading responsible business issues inside the European Parliament for many years, I host our discussion of the latest developments in the fields of corporate sustainability, sustainable finance, business and human rights. Today, the architect of European Sustainability Reporting Standards, ESRS, the outgoing chair of Europe's Sustainability Reporting Board, Patrick de Cambourg. As he finishes his term of office, it's an excellent time to reflect with him on the journey taken and that's still to come. Patrick, welcome to Frankly Speaking.
Good morning to you.
Now, I want to take you back to start with before ESRS. You're someone who worked his way to the very top of the French accountancy company Mazars. So your background is in financial reporting. And then on behalf of the French accounting standard setting body ANSEE, you produced a report in 2019 on the societal and environmental responsibility of listed companies, which advocated further change to Europe's non-financial reporting law. So coming from finance, why did you get interested in sustainability and sustainability reporting? What was your personal journey from finance to sustainability?
Well, Richard, I think that the key point here is that when you spend the best part of your professional life trying to improve the quality of financial data, because that's always pivotal, you realize that at the end of the day, this is not the end of the story. So, of course, financial reporting via accounting, via all the good principles that have been analyzed for decades and that have, developed internationally and nationally at European level, at global level. You see the progress, you see the maturity of financial reporting, but you see also the limitations. So there was no point criticizing the pivotal pillar that financial reporting is, but the idea developed that, it was not, as I was saying, the end of the story. We are very well aware that financial reporting is one, retrospective, two, based on monetary measurements only, in a closed environment due to the very interesting rule that goes back to Luca Pacioli of debits and credits. You are in a perfect world that gives the impression that you are, moving into, certainty. But, there are so many facts and circumstances that are not properly reflected by retrospective information and by monetary measurements that you need to ask yourself the question, is there a need for a second pillar? And that's where, as you were mentioning, after many years with Mazars, now Forvis Mazars, when I stepped down from an executive role, I was offered the position, which is a public position, of chair of the French accounting standard setter, ANC. And, specializing on the standard setting, developments, I realized that there was an emerging second pillar, which was the sustainability reporting pillar, which was called at that time non-financial, by the way. And by the way, I open a parenthesis here, I don't like non-financial, because you don't define yourself by what you are not. You want to define yourself by what you want to address. And what you want to address is sustainability. Sustainability means medium and long term. You are sustainable because you are able to go beyond the past and the present and to address the future. You are a long-standing organization, but that's the past. You want to know what your future is. So sustainability is about future. So, I was telling the French agency is under the supervision of the Ministry of Finance. And I was telling the minister, look, I think that, we have to consider how to get out of a fragmented landscape where private initiatives are multiplied. Companies are asked many questionnaires by many stakeholders. All sorts of information is flying around. The quality is not okay, even if people are trying to do the best they can do. But nevertheless, the quality is nowhere near the quality of financial information.
I'm smiling because, of course, I was head of one of those private initiatives at the time, and you interviewed me in the way that I'm interviewing you today.
Apologies for that, Richard. No,
Now, can I
no
take you?
criticism intended.
Can I take you on to EFRAG? And you formed a project task force even before it was formalised to begin the preparations for having European sustainability reporting standards. And you went on to produce 12 sets when it became the Sustainability Reporting Board, 12 sets of standards, very comprehensive, everything from climate to affected communities to business conduct. And you actually did it in about 1 year, which is incredible. Just tell me a little bit about that period and what it was like living through it.
The journey started in September 2020. You may remember that you are very familiar with the European institutions. So the new commission had been put in place at the end of 2019, and they declared early 2020 that they wanted to modify the NFRD. Commissioner Dombrovskis said it very clearly in January and February 2020. And he announced that he would ask EFRAG to work on it. But, the pandemic arrived, and that postponed everything by a few months. So we resumed conversation with the Commission in the summer of 2020, and the task force was launched. 35 members, all via contributions in kind, dedicating part of their time. We were requiring a minimum of 25% of a full time to work on this. We had two phases. One was, exploratory, and then when the Commission tabled the draft CSRD in April 2021, they realized that, of course, the standards were needed and that drafting should start immediately. Let me mention that beyond the contribution of the members of the task forces, the two successive task forces, I made a number of calls to all sorts of organizations that were keen to contribute, and we organized a secretariat from scratch on the basis of contribution in kind as well, about 30 full-time equivalent for the full year. And that's how combination of the members and combination of the secretariat members that we've been able to produce the 12 exposure drafts that were put to consultation in April 2022. So to make a long story short, the idea was not to start from, to reinvent the wheel, because, you were mentioning initiatives and the ones that you were keen to support at that time. There was a wealth of already existing, first of all, initiatives and also practices. So we capitalized. The idea was to capitalize, and maybe I can immediately say it, maybe we we somehow aligned on, the best performance, in a way that was maybe too heavy, too much for the average company in scope. So that will explain why we had to go to simplification afterwards. But the idea was to create something, the quality of which would be equivalent to financial reporting.
You were asked by the European Commission, politics changed in Europe, and the European Commission asked you to undertake a simplification exercise and to actually tear up quite a lot that you'd done. And you went on the record at that point and you said that oversimplification risks greenwashing. So you obviously had some reservations about that at the time. How did you feel when you were asked, in effect, to do that?
No. Since it was very clear from the beginning that the omnibus initiative was, not intended to modify the core objectives of the Green Deal, which is to provide reliable and quality information about sustainability matters. I think it was a very healthy exercise to ask ourselves if we had gone too far, and if the implementation had fully grasped the overall intention that was behind the first set of standards. Because we were extremely fortunate. We had a host of companies that were applying already on financial reporting year 2024, the first set of standards that had been approved in 2023. So on the basis of the wealth of experience, we saw where maybe we had overdid it, and also how people had interpreted some of our requirements in maybe too much of a granular manner. So all of this was extremely interesting. You know that in standard setting there is something that is called post-implementation review. Normally it happens after 4 or 5 years, but here in a very new field of reporting, we accepted the idea that it was urgent to have this post-implementation review as early as possible. And that's why when EFRAG discussed with the Commission, we said we are totally on board. If the objective is to reduce the burden, to make sure that people, put the emphasis on what really matters, and if what really matters is aligned with the Green Deal objectives in terms of environment and social and governance matters, that's fine for us, and that's what we did.
I agree with you. I think there was over implementation, but if you take some of the politicians, and of course you were accountable to European politicians, but some of the politicians really attacked the standards. One from the centre-right group said you had, quote, got completely out of hand, and one from the far-right parties, but who created the majority for the changes in the European Parliament. And again, I quote, that you had created a bureaucratic hell. Now, it was a highly politicized environment and very, very difficult, I'm sure, to operate within. How do you interpret all of that now?
I think that, well, we are under the interest of the CSRD that it creates a legal environment that is applicable and that is creating the next. It's a game-changing environment for reporting and for sustainability reporting. So we are very happy to be under the umbrella of a legally binding system, because that's giving the extreme strength. We move from a voluntary landscape to a mandatory landscape, whatever on the basis of the scope that the politicians decide. I think, frankly speaking, this is your motto. So frankly speaking, I think that we missed, both the European institutions, and maybe we should have advised as well. I mean, the scope was a mix of very large multinationals that had already somehow developed a reasonable level of reporting under the NFRD, and there was a need to strengthen this for those companies. But the mix between those multinationals or very large companies and, the 251 employee company, which is very close to an SME under the European definition, and for which, the standards were far too much. So we missed this one in our enthusiasm, and that's why we supported the Omnibus Initiative. And I'm personally, quote, an optimist, and I think that there is an element of virtuous circle into this, because there is a need. If the momentum is created, then normally businesses will adapt to what is needed. It is primarily in their interest, because by addressing the major transitions that are in front of us, businesses certainly will benefit from that in terms of, business development, valuation, success in general terms, and also societal, acceptance and credibility. So for me, it's in their interest. It's also in the interest of the stakeholders, investors, lenders will need this information. If not, and I am not mentioning even the large that have businesses in their supply chains that from which they will need to have some sort of relationship in terms of data. So, creating a reliable data environment regarding sustainability matters is an objective that's here to stay. It's not going to disappear. Maybe people can say that, but it's a short-term view that will not prosper, in my view, and medium or long-term reality will come back, and therefore we are well prepared. And I think it's a big European asset to be at the forefront of this evolution.
It's clearly it's a hugely interesting example of standard setting. And so I have to ask one question, which is about learning from how you did what you did. And I'm going to ask you a question that I did ask you before on the stage. I'm not sure you answered. I hope you might today. What were some of the biggest disagreements, or the biggest disagreement that you had? And I'm not asking you to name names. And how did you as chair overcome that disagreement?
Surprisingly, first of all, I would mention a few points. The first one was, are we in a fair presentation regime or are we not? For me, but I had colleagues that were, careful about that or cautious about what I'm going to say. It's a minority, but nevertheless, it's fair to mention that we had not. And I will mention how we moved forward and made and finally made a decision. But we put the emphasis in the simplified standards on fair presentation because we believe that it is the ultimate goal to deliver a fair presentation of the sustainability matters that really matter for the companies that are reporting. And by the way, if you want to be on a par situation with financial reporting, you need to have a similar concept as an umbrella concept. So that was one. The other point that I would like to mention, and it might be a bit surprising to a certain extent, is the quantitative financial anticipated financial effects. It may seem strange that with the background of financial reporting, this has become an issue. But I understand why. Predicting the future in general terms is easier than to try to explain what would be the financial consequences, the effects on your cash flows, profit, balance sheet in the future. So we had a long debate about that, which was finally concluded on taking the principle on board, giving time for companies to adapt, and introducing reasonable and commonsensical reliefs. So these are two examples of the big issues. How did we overcome? As chair of EFRAG, my key role is to foster consensus. And normally, decisions are taken by consensus. So what we did, that's my last quarter of 2025, I called each and every member of the board asking where the pain points were, and if that was an element of reservation, and if the reservation was so strong that it would be a dissenting view. So, we analyzed, we have 22, there are 22 members in the SRB. So I spoke to each and every one of them. And then I prepared a mapping on a standard by standard basis of the pre-opinions of my colleagues under what I call a color-coded system, with green, yellow, orange, and red, depending on the level of concern. So that was giving a picture of where we were standing. And then we focused on the pain points, and we reduced the number of pain points. And then finally, we had another round of discussion, individually and collectively, to finalize the decision. And all the standards were approved with a qualified majority, which is 2/3. 7 of the 12 standards were approved unanimously, but the other ones had some dissenting views, a minority, as I said. And it was focusing in most cases on fair presentation, some difficult or perceived as difficult data points, and also quantitative anticipated financial effects. But in the end, and that is reflected fully in the letter I sent to the Commission on behalf of the board, where I explained that we had reached an agreement, but that there were elements of reservation and there were some dissenting views on certain standards.
And just to remind you to our listeners, the revised standards are with the Commission at the moment, will only be published, and let's see what further changes they might make later in the year. Now, I think many of the critics of the simplification and of the omnibus would say Europe's given up its leadership role. It was a leader, but it's given it up. And you and I know there's something called the Brussels effect. Always, for the last years, it's been thought that doing things together at the EU level had great advantage for business and others, and not just the advantage of cooperation between each other and getting rid of internal rules and obstructions, but that Europe, by forging ahead, was very influential in terms of global decision making, in this sense, global standards. And some people are saying that the Brussels effect is dead now, that Brussels has handed over the torch to other regions of the world. Clearly, we've got global standards. I should ask you, why not just stick with those? Why should Europe do this in the first place? I think that's a question answered many times, but I will put it again today. And is the Brussels effect, in your view, still alive?
It's difficult to predict in the geopolitical environment that we are experiencing as we speak. I see for me, I see a reasonable level of acknowledgement that the simplification that we have performed is, a real one. We, of course, there are some people that believe that we've gone too far. Others believe that we should go further, but we tried to keep the middle of the road approach, protecting the core information while reducing the burden significantly via the 6 levers that we used to simplify. I personally made a point at the beginning of the journey of the simplification not to have a quantitative objective in terms of a reduction of data points, but to start from, the substance, like reviewing the DMA, making the reports more readable, creating simpler standards, introducing reliefs, enhancing interoperability with other frameworks. All of this was our key concern. And the consequence of that is the reduction. I remember vividly a conversation that we had with the Commission when I said, okay, let's focus on substance, and believe it or not, you will see that the reduction in data points will emerge from that. And by the way, the key point was to move to a more principles-based, system instead of being granular and prescriptive to the finest, to the most detailed aspects of each and every disclosure. So it's a trust in, the benchmarking exercise that companies will do over time. And by the way, they already had 1-year experience for the ones in most of the companies that are still in scope were already in scope in 2024. So they already applied the 2023 standards. So they will not see, a revolution in what is being asked with the new standards. The concepts remain the same. They are clarified. The number of data points has been reduced by about 70%. So all of this is, we have clarified a lot, I think.
Can I just press you on that point about the International Sustainability Standards Board, the global standards, though? I know you've been asked it many times, but Emmanuel Faber, who heads up the work of the ISSB, made a public comment criticizing the fact that anticipated financial impact of sustainability was a relief and being delayed in the ESRS. It's been an interesting relationship between what you're doing and what the global standards have been doing. There's a lot of diplomacy about what's said in public, but I want to give you a chance to reflect back on that now, in terms of whether that relationship could have been better and to justify why you've been doing what you've been doing.
Well, first of all, let me state that from day one, we said that we would capitalize, build on, and contribute to the development of global sustainability reporting at global level. And we just did that because, ESRS, when you comply with ESRS, apart from a few points, you are aligned with ISSB, because ISSB, as you know, 2 standards, S1, which is the umbrella standard, and then climate, S2. We are more comprehensive, but we cover S1 is very close to what we do. We even enhanced the compatibility with the emphasis on fair presentation. So for me, this intention from day one has been totally, met and fulfilled, and there is no issue. We are there, and the simplification, apart from the quote-unquote controversy on quantitative anticipated financial effects, which was a very, very strong request from European businesses, including to the ISSB. To be careful about that, because, it is very difficult in the current circumstances to disclose what would be the effects, sorry, of on cash flows, profitability, or balance sheet, and therefore this is a controversy that is still, but there was a strong request from businesses to be careful about that. So we have, as I mentioned, we have set the principle, but we have given time. So that's the only difference. If European businesses want to comply with the ISSB, they as well, they only have to consider a few points, including this one. So you would have to anticipate what they are required to do under the simplified ESRS in 2030. They have to do it now, unless ISSB decides to give a relief as well, which is, of course, a question to them, not for me to decide. So, but, it was, and by the way, it was an agreement, quote unquote, between businesses that were reluctant to accept the principle. They wanted a voluntary system, or some businesses, not all, but the ones that were very, very cautious about that. And the investors wanted the anticipated financial effects. So, you have a mixed bag here, and we took, as I said, the middle of the road approach in order not to compromise the future, but to give time, because we are, maybe, one of the key points I would like to mention is that with set one, with the 2023 standards, we were going a bit too fast, maybe, on everything, because it's a game-changing exercise. And also people are discovering when they implement, they want to do it well. Maybe they overdo it. Auditors as well. No criticism intended here, but there was, a feeling of, of excessive burden, when in fact, because we are trying to solve the quality of sustainability reporting in a matter of 3-4 years, when for financial reporting, it took 20, 30, 40 years. So, accelerating the evolution is certainly, a good objective. But if you go too fast, you are at risk of losing part of the people that are in the race. And that was our problem.
In the last part of what I want to talk to you about, I want to look forward. Clearly, having stepped down, Kirsten Lopietza is the new chair, and it's not for you to tell her what to do. I'm not going to ask you that. But when you were there back in France in the late 2010s, you showed a lot of vision about where things are going. What's your vision now in terms of business sustainability reporting? However you choose to answer this, what's your vision of how this might develop going into the future?
Well, first of all, I think that sustainability reporting is here to stay in spite of what we hear. So it's a critical point, because, as I said, it is the primary interest of the businesses themselves, but it's also key to create the right level of, flow of information and data in the market. It is absolutely crucial if you want to create trust and enhance trust. You need that kind of information. So I think now that, with this objective in mind and this, belief that it is here to stay, I think we need to give time to people to absorb the simplified standards, and to reach a reasonable level of reporting that would be mature enough. The ingredients for being equivalent to financial reporting in terms of quality are embedded into the standards and embedded in the CSRD. And the political discussions have not modified this, which is absolutely key. So for me, unless there is something happening at political level, which I cannot predict, I mean, the foundations for a reliable sustainability set of a reliable set of sustainability related data are well established. And we need time now to make sure that, yes, I remember vividly when the EU moved to the IFRS back in 2002, 2005, it was not a given. And I remember the criticism, the pain that was mentioned, the efforts that were required, and the time that was needed. So, I think with time, we will see this maturing. I think also that, I see a different view internationally. I would somehow be careful about trying to see what's happening in the US, because I see, the administration saying things. I see also businesses being, careful not to lose the investments that they have made and trying to progress as well. So, but it's a bit difficult to predict there. In the rest of the world, of course, there is an element of caution, but there is still progress. Japan, China, Brazil, very big jurisdictions are somehow, embarking upon sustainability reporting seriously. And in China, just to mention this one, impact materiality has been introduced in addition to financial materiality. So it's an interesting development. So I think we are at the beginning of a journey. The EU has been reasonably amending its system with the scope modification to a large extent, and with the simplification on the standards side. So we are more proportionate, I would say, and that is an interesting example going forward. And the ISSB is making every effort to also, adapt to the various jurisdictional circumstances. Not to mention GRI, that of course is interesting because they were the front runner many years ago on impact reporting. I personally think that impact reporting is better placed into an overall system, the double materiality approach. But we are interoperable with GRI as well, to a large extent. And this simplification has not modified that. So, there's a convergence in terms of frameworks, not perfect, but it's a very game-changing step that has been made, and therefore, I think that we are moving forward.
And convergence, of course, is what we were seeking in the late 2010s. And I agree with you, by the way, that for all of the complications and difficulties that there are enormous strides that have been made there. Patrick, we've reached the last question. And many of us don't get a chance to shape our own legacy, but I'm going to invite you to do that. What are the lessons, briefly, I'm afraid, but what lessons would you give to your successors? And what is your parting or farewell message to the European Sustainability Reporting Board? The next one.
I have no lessons to give, and my key observation is that in a world where the multiplication of news, data, we are totally submerged by data, the quality of which is questionable. So for me, by focusing on quality data, quality data means what? Means standardized, good governance to prepare, to elaborate and management processes. It means also a proper auditing process and a good supervision. The ingredients that made financial reporting reliable are key for sustainability reporting and are key for the future of companies. If we don't do that, so, for us, waving the flag of quality data, whatever in everything we do at EFRAG or at the individual level, is for me key, because this is where we will make a difference with the flow of unreliable data that is submerging us. So fake news versus audited and reliable and comparable, all the qualities that we know, i.e. relevance, faithful representation, comparability, understandability, and verifiability. This is basic. We just replicate, but by replicating, this is key. The other point maybe, and I would like to mention, I said that we have a corporate reporting system that is walking on two legs, two pillars, financial reporting and sustainability reporting. One of my observations is that we have to be careful about not to be punitive. We have also to inform about intangibles. And you might remember that in task force number 1, we were mentioning intangibles as an area for reporting. The CSRD was careful about that, and it's only incidental. I think companies will have to be careful about trying to also to cover on an ad hoc basis. And maybe that's the third pillars to come in 15 years.
That's an excellent
Plus,
challenge.
connectivity between financial reporting and sustainability reporting for me is key. If you have two legs and if you want to walk straight, you need a coordination. That's the brain. And the brain is the governance, and the governance is applying connectivity.
Fascinating to spend this time with you. In this podcast, Patrick has told us that sustainability reporting is here to stay. He reminded us that this started off from recognizing the limitations of financial reporting. He's made the case that a mandatory landscape is the key change here that will be understood in years to come. When he's talked about the detail of the standards, he's emphasized the importance of fair presentation, taking that concept from financial reporting and bringing it into sustainability. He's cautioned about anticipated financial effects of sustainability based on what businesses have said, he said. He talks about the future being one of maturing, and companies having time to do the reporting well. And in that final answer, he talked about the importance of data quality in an era where that is hugely challenged, but where there is more and more data. And he said that maybe in the future that intangibles and reporting on intangibles may come on board, and we'll certainly try and cover that in future podcasts. It's been an enormous pleasure, Patrick, to have you on the podcast and meet you on many, many other occasions in these last years. And I want to thank you not just for being with us today, but for everything that you've done over those years on behalf of many people who are stakeholders and who've been part of that process. Patrick de Cambourg, thank you very, very much indeed.
Thank you very much, Richard. It's always a pleasure to have a discussion with you, and I hope the podcast will be interesting for the audience. Thank you so much.
You've been listening to the Frankly Speaking podcast on responsible business. Find out more about Frank Bold's Responsible Companies section on our website, and please give us your feedback on our LinkedIn page or by commenting via your podcast provider, where we hope you will share this conversation and give this podcast a 5-star rating. And remember, you can watch us on our YouTube channel too. Thank you again to Patrick and to all of you for listening. Do join us next time, and goodbye.